There are moments when something shifts, not with thunder or headlines, but with a tremor so quiet that only hearts can hear it. It feels like entering a chapel and noticing that the candle beside the tabernacle flickers differently, not violently, not dramatically, but as if something invisible has gently stirred the air. In the life of the Church today, that flicker has appeared. It is not an announcement. Not a protest. Not even a rumor. It is something more mysterious, like hearing a hymn you have known all your life, but realizing for the first time that one note has been changed. Something subtle. Something ancient. And something dangerous. The silence, though calm, carries weight. If you haven't subscribed, click on the subscribe button so you don't miss out on future videos like this, because what you're about to hear is not just news, it's a wake-up call for every heart that still believes truth should burn brighter than silence. Now grab your rosary, quiet your spirit, and let your heart listen, not just with ears, but with faith. For months, theologians, bishops, and ordinary Catholics have sensed that something in the atmosphere of the Church has shifted. Some say it is simply change. Others call it a time of confusion, a stretching of doctrine, a reinterpretation of what has always been believed. But perhaps the right word is neither confusion nor change. Perhaps the right word is forgetfulness, forgetting not just what the faith teaches, but who the faith is. Because Christianity is not a philosophy. Not an idea. Not an institution. Christianity is a person. A question that once shook the foundations of the ancient world has quietly returned: who is Jesus Christ? Some say he is a prophet. Others call him a wise teacher, a model of compassion, an icon of justice, a healer, a revolutionary, a mystical leader, a man of perfect morality. But Pope Leo XIV, with a calm but unshakable gravity, stepped gently into this growing ambiguity, not with fear, not with accusation, but with clarity. He said, "We are witnessing the return of an ancient heresy." For those who know history, those words are heavy. They echo like thunder across centuries. It is the same heresy that once nearly fractured the early Church. The heresy that forced bishops, martyrs, and saints to stand and speak even at the cost of their lives. The heresy that once traveled through sermons, books, intellectual circles, and polite conversations. The heresy that sneaks not through denial, but through distortion. Arianism. The belief that Jesus was an exalted figure, holy, admirable, even chosen, but not truly, fully, eternally God. And now, it has returned. Not loudly. Not arrogantly. But subtly. Wrapped not in rebellion, but in kindness. Not in defiance, but in vague spirituality. A Jesus who inspires, but does not save. A Jesus who teaches beautifully, but does not conquer death. A Jesus who comforts with emotion, but does not transform the soul. A Jesus spoken of with affection, but not adored with wonder. A Jesus whom we admire, but no longer worship. That is the danger. Because when Christ is reduced,
Et tibi gratias agens benedixit deditque discipulis suis dicet,
like a candle suffocating slowly in a
accipite
room
et
that has
vivite
forgotten
ex
to
eo
breathe.
omnes.
So when
Hic
Pope
est
Leo
enim
XIV
calix
spoke,
sanguinis
people
mei,
did not feel corrected.
novi et eterni
They felt
testamenti,
awakened.
qui pro vobis
His
et
message
pro
came
multis
not as a warning of
effundetur
punishment,
in
but as an
remissionem
invitation to
peccatorum,
clarity.
hoc
Not a
facite
condemnation,
in meam
but a remembrance.
commemorationem.
Not an attempt to preserve the past, but to protect what is eternal. He said, there is a growing tendency, even among those who call themselves Christians, to reduce Jesus to only a moral teacher, an example, a good man, but not God. And that question, once again, rises. Who is Jesus? If he is only a teacher, then his words are wise but not binding. If he is only a prophet, then he can inspire, but not redeem. If he is only a symbol of goodness, then nothing actually changes. But if he is God, everything changes. Then the Eucharist is not bread. It is God hidden in humility. Then the cross is not a tragedy. It is salvation. Then the Church is not just community. It is His mystical body. Then Mass is not memory, but presence, heaven descending to earth. This is why, 1,700 years ago, men gathered in Nicaea. They did not gather because they wanted intellectual precision. They gathered to defend worship. Because if Christ is not God, then adoration is idolatry. But if He is God, then adoration is truth. And worship is not optional. It is everything. Pope Leo's intervention, then, was not just theological, it was Eucharistic. He reminded the Church that the battle for truth is not fought only in books or synods, but before the tabernacle, on one's knees. Because when reverence weakens, faith does not collapse immediately. It fades gradually. Worship becomes routine. Kneeling becomes habit. Silence becomes empty. And then, almost unknowingly, we reach a point where people go to church but do not expect to meet God. That is the crisis of our time. Not disbelief, but indifference. Not denial of God's presence, but amnesia. This is why, when Pope Leo XIV spoke, his tone was not aggressive. It was reverent, almost mournful, like someone gently opening a forgotten treasure, not to show it off, but to remind the world that it still exists. He wrote, "If Jesus Christ is not fully God, then He cannot save. If He is not fully human, then He cannot reach us." With those words, hearts trembled. Because it was not just doctrine. It was salvation. It was love. It was the simple, yet infinite truth that God did not merely teach humanity. He entered it. He did not just send words. He sent Himself. Not symbolically. Not metaphorically. Truly. The renewal Pope Leo seemed to inspire was not loud. There were no banners. No speeches. No slogans. Instead, something quieter began. Adoration chapels, once nearly empty, began filling, especially with youth. Confession lines grew longer. Eucharistic processions appeared in cities where they had not been seen for years. In Cologne, young Catholics organized nights of silent adoration, no stage, no microphones, no entertainment, just silence before the monstrance. In Argentina, thousands walked barefoot in Eucharistic processions, singing in soft voices, some weeping quietly as the monstrance passed. In the Philippines, children began falling to their knees with surprising reverence, without
Et
being
tibi
told
gratias
to, simply
agens
because they felt
benedixit
something holy.
deditque discipuli
In Dubai,
suis
migrant workers
dicens.
gathered in underground chapels,
Accipite
risking
et vivite
punishment
ex
to
eo
kneel before
omnes.
what the world calls
Hic
bread,
est
but what they
enim
know
calix
is God.
sanguinis mei,
No
novi et
campaigns or
eterni
prayer.
testamenti,
No
qui
announcement
pro
called them.
vobis et pro multis
It
et
was hunger.
fundetur in
Spiritual
remissionem
hunger is
peccatorum,
different from
hoc
curiosity.
facite in
It
meam
is different from
commemorationem.
Curiosity fades. Interest distracts. But hunger persists. It grows. It aches. It does not leave until it is fed. That hunger is growing now, not just for inspiration, not just for theology, but for real presence. And that presence is what Pope Leo XIV reminded the Church to see, not just think about, not just speak of, but to kneel before. Some people fear that strong doctrine creates a rigid church. But maybe the opposite is true. Maybe it is confusion that hardens the heart. Because when truth is unclear, trust becomes impossible. And when trust is broken, faith weakens. But when truth is clear, reverence is possible. And when reverence is restored, worship becomes real. And when worship becomes real, hearts awaken. Perhaps what is happening now is not simply a return to tradition, not a resurgence of argument, not a revival of religious activism, but something simpler, something purer. The return of adoration. Not emotional excitement. Not religious activism. But worship. Not noise. Not fear. Not debate. Silence. Presence. Kneeling. Maybe that is how true renewal begins, not in intellectual brilliance, not in political strategy, but in wonder. There is a cathedral in Krakow where, every Friday, between midnight and sunrise, hundreds of young adults gather in silence before the Eucharist. No priest leads them. No program is scheduled. They just kneel, some weeping, some smiling, some simply staring in silence, because something inside them whispers, "He is here." This is not nostalgia. This is not rebellion. This is not performance. It is a response. Because when God is present, truly present, the soul does not need to be convinced. It knows. Maybe that is what this moment in the Church is about. Not a change in doctrine. Not a battle of ideologies. But a restoration of sight. Seeing Christ again, not as an idea to analyze, not as a spiritual guru, not as an inspirational icon, but as God. Holy. Hidden. Humble. Present. Not far away. Not symbolic. But here. Perhaps the real question is no longer, do you believe in Jesus? Because almost everyone claims belief in something called Jesus. The real question, quietly rising again in the Church, is different. Do you adore him? Do you kneel before him? Do you worship him, not for what he teaches, but for who he is? Do you recognize him? That is why Nicaea still matters, not as history, but as prophecy. Because as long as humanity forgets that Christ is truly God, faith will always be at risk of fading, not through rejection, but through reduction. Not by anger, but by indifference. Not by denial, but by forgetting. And so, the renewal begins not in shouting, not in war, not in argument, but in silence. Before the Eucharist. Where the soul knows. He is here. Some say the Church is declining. Some say it is awakening. Perhaps,
Et tibi gratias sagens benedixit deditque discipulis suis dicens. Accipite et vivite ex eo omnes. It est enim calix sanguinis mei, novi et eterni testamenti, qui pro vobis et pro multis effundetur in remissionem peccatorum. Hoc facite in meam commemorationem.
Amen.